And if only there was a crying pill, our whole culture would be saved. If scientists could come up with a pill and when you took it you just burst into tears, there'd be no more war. Because I want to be a walking permission slip for people to think it's not such a big deal to cry all the time. Whenever I can cry, I think of it as a great blessing. It's like the most beautiful dump. Everything is a turning towards. Life is going to give us this huge spectrum of all the different bits of us, especially the bits we've pushed away. Life is all about wholeness. Life with a big L is all about mending itself back to wholeness all the time, whether you like it or not. Look at your body. Every part of your body is mending itself all the time. So it's doing the same with the way we're pushing different parts of ourselves away. It's illegal to be needy. Okay, I'm never needy. I'm never angry. I'm never this. And pushing all these parts of ourselves away. They have to find a way back. It's just life itself. And that's going to often be uncomfortable. If you're a human that can't put your hand up and say, I'm a human who is willing to feel some of my uncomfortable feelings, you're going to be literally fighting with life all the time as it tries to bring you back all your parts.
For episode 33, my guest is musician, fool and author Jamie Catto. You may know him from the band Faithless or the One Giant Leap films and album. Some of you may know his workshops, including Transforming Shadows and Mojo Blast, and the upcoming Bitches and Bastards with Ruby May. Others may have listened to or read his book Insanely Gifted. When Jamie received his first royalty check from Faithless, he was so blown away that he created the Happening album, where he gathered incredible musicians together to make something to thank the gods and goddesses of music for allowing him to make a living from this. The little bit of sound we use for our intro and outro is from a track from a more recent album by The Happening called Spring Clean. And so we thank the musicians and the music gods and goddesses for gifting us this. Before we get into the interview, where the patriarchy features heavily as we delve into how to be ourselves, transform our suffering, and be activists on the twin trail, please do remember to help us grow if you love anything about this podcast. You can do this by telling your friends to have a listen, giving us some gold stars and a review on iTunes, or donating some cash each month to support our team in making this. You can find out more about that at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. And Jamie is launching the Academy of the Sacred Fool next Monday and is giving you a special discount on their first offering, A-Maze, Game-Changing Tools for Sacred Fools, which you can get from our post about this episode on our website. I hope that you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future, despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives. When we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. I'm delighted today to be joined by Jamie Catto. Welcome.
Thank you.
I wanted to start by asking you about permission. A lot of people, ourselves at times, struggle with giving ourselves permission to do things that we really want to do, to feel what we're actually feeling. All of these different ways. And you talk about becoming and being a walking permission slip.
Yes.
Can you explain what that means?
That means that just by you and me being more authentically ourselves, feeling less melodramatic about people seeing the spectrum of who we are more. It doesn't have to be absolutely everything, but instead of the tiny aperture of the shop window of most people show each other of only the good bits, and you must never see me in my weak state or my needy state or my angry state or my dishonest state or whatever. By us being more comfortable that we even have those parts of ourselves, that we can even admit to ourselves we get needy without it being illegal, or angry without it being unspiritual, or by me being more comfortable with being those spectrum of myself, just being near me, you're going to be more comfortable being the full spectrum of yourself, and you're going to be less uptight, less dishonest, less mask wearing, less manipulative, less strategizing and anxious, allowing more of yourself to not have to be hidden and controlled and, the shop window upkept. So that's what I mean by a walking permission slip, is removing the melodrama of all the things that we are, even to ourselves, so that we make it much less of a big deal. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, the Tibetan rascal monk, his mantra was no big deal. It's not the things itself in our lives that that are bothering us. It's the big deal we're making of it, and the negative filter we're looking at it through. That all, for example, like all discomfort is bad. That's a negative and incorrect filter to live life through. Yet we're all brainwashed to be totally comfort addicted. Get a headache, take a pill. Feel uneasy, get a session with Jamie, or whatever. And most of the time people can't have a session with me, it's because they've got a thing they want to get rid of. It's already got it wrong from the beginning. And so I have to start the session saying, hey, it's not you I actually need to speak to. I need to speak to the one who knows. There's no getting rid of anything. There's turning towards it and being curious about it and not letting it govern you and be such a scary phantom that you're just pushing it away and need to get rid of it and blah, blah. Everything is a turning towards. And life is going to give us this huge spectrum of all the different bits of us, especially the bits we've pushed away. Life is all about wholeness. Life with a big L is all about mending itself back to wholeness all the time, whether you like it or not. Look at your body. Every part of your body is mending itself all the time. So it's doing the same with the way we're pushing different parts of ourselves away. It's illegal to be needy. Okay, I'm never needy. I'm never angry. I'm never this. I'm pushing all these parts of ourselves away. They have to find a way back. It's just life itself. So, and that's going to often be uncomfortable. If you're a human that can't put your hand up and say, I'm a human who is willing to feel some of my uncomfortable feelings, you're going to be literally fighting with life all the time as it tries to bring you back all your parts. So I've tried to substitute terror and rejection with curiosity whenever I can. Not always, but if I can do it 1 in 10, I consider myself the fucking Buddha and get a badge. Like if just once in 10 you can let one hit you, all I ask of myself. I'm not slave driving myself along having to get a perfect score, because I always say it's a rodeo horse covered in Vaseline. All the things and the parts coming back to us and this full spectrum of who we are is going to knock us on our ass over and over again. Whether you land on your ass laughing or complaining is up to us.
There's this thing with authenticity. I'm totally with you with this and giving yourself permission to be who you are and feel how you feel. Something that people have said to me is that if you're authentic, then, you can't like lead if you're being authentic, for example, because their rationale was when you're, say, leading, or you have to show a certain side to make everyone else feel a certain level of safety or respect. And these things are all kind of societal cultures that we've created. And so when you do step a bit outside of them, it can lead to some...
It can be disruptive.
Yeah.
And it can stir people up into a judgmental place where you are displaying freedom in areas where they don't yet feel free. And this is like perfect example is how they tried to take down Anita Roddick. How the male patriarchal, your favourite word.
It's not just my favourite word. It's a lot of people's favourite word.
How the patriarchy tried to take out Anita Roddick, who was one of the most successful businesswomen of recent decades, who began the Body Shop. And they basically tried to say to her, you cannot do good in the world and make money. They just decided that was a rule. It's bollocks. And you can lead incredibly without having to have the NLP leadership skills badge. You can lead very, very quietly. You don't have to make great proclamations. You lead by listening. I think the greatest leadership is by listening. So one of the things we go on a lot about the workshops is the yin and the yang of each of us. That each of us has a yang side, which has been fully trained up to meet problems and do things and penetrate the world and make a decision and lead and follow the linear things to the end and get the prize and cross the line. And it's a very doing, imposing us. And when something comes along we don't like, we impose ourselves on it, strategize and make it back how we wanted. Very patriarchal, masculine, yang part. We're men and women. What we're not taught, men and women, is to cultivate the yin side, which is the one that gets impacted, which is taken along, and a great idea pops into your head. The yin side of us that is impacted by the world, that listens, is the space around. Leadership from listening is the greatest leadership. I think, for example, as being a dad, to lead from the yin, so I'm the space around the child. It's growing into whatever kind of tomato plant it wants to be. I'm not imposing on it what kind of tomato plant it should grow into. Put your shoes on, be an accountant. I'm the space around it to make the most perfect environment possible for it to thrive. And that's how I treat my projects. I can be the director, and of course my ego will say, well, that's better than that. And there is guidance and stewardship, but only from the deep listening, only from being the space around the project, wanting to be devotional and pour ourselves into our projects. That yin creates the perfect environment for it to thrive. And then the yang doing part of me will always do the right action, but only when the yin part of me has listened. So leadership through listening, through yin, is actually really what this planet needs for a more beautiful world, if that's what we're going for, than the usual. If my yang gets busy before my yin has listened, the yin in me is much more connected to spirit, to my alignment. When I listen and I ask a question, I go, what's really true for me here? And I sit in space, I will listen and hear the real truth. But if I try and think up the answer with my yang front mind, I'll come up with something sometimes pretty good, but not the real genius answer. So the yin always leads the yang, and that's why we mistake male leadership for destination choosing. For me, it's the female in us, the yin, that goes, we need to go over there. That's destination choosing, and then says to the masculine in us, pack up the car and lead us over there. And the male leadership, the destination is already chosen. So the doing is being moved by the yin and the listening. Confounding the rules of leadership or anything, there are a million ways to lead. And as a parent or leading a project, I want to do it from my listening and being, like when you're editing a film, you let the brilliant footage tell you where it wants to be by it moving your taste. You don't prescribe a storyboard and make it be that. You'll get something good, but you'll get a much better film if you don't prescribe this shot has to go to that shot and this has to go here and that has to go there. You let the footage tell you where it likes to be and fall together beautifully under your stewardship. You'll get a 10 times better film. And the greatest lovemaking happens in the listening. If you're really tuned into who you're making love with and listening in every fiber of your being to every sound, smell, vibration, frequency, everything, you're going to have the best lovemaking of your life. Dancing is the same, the joy of dancing. You're being yin, it's moving you. The beat is moving you. You're not deciding left shoulder wiggle, right foot in, right foot out. If you're dancing enjoyably, you're just being moved by the beat, you're yin. And also laughter is in the yin. You don't laugh on purpose unless you're uncomfortable. You're relaxed enough and a laugh wave comes through and you go, it laughed you. It's more realistic to say, I am smiled, I am laughed, than I laugh. So it's really the yin is untrained in all of us, but is where all the genius, to instruct our yang, egoic, linear thinking minds to do things in the world. The genius all actually moves from the yin. And that's what all of our stuff is about at the moment. That's where I think a beautiful world is going to come from, our listening, not our busy thinking up and doing. Mm-hmm. Listening is the key to all of it. And we have a thing in the workshops called full body listening, where we take, like the Vipassana, take a radar through our body constantly, switch it on so it's never off again. So the moment someone triggers you, the first thing you go, wah, wah, solar plexus, the first thing that happens is the thing in the body, the charge in the body. Before you jump into a fight with someone or how wrong they were, or the first thing is you deal with your own charge in your own body and then have a conversation, which we very rarely do. But if you make the body the first thing, the listening to the inside of the body, the first stop, we can save ourselves so many wrong conversations and choices and things which were led just by trying not to feel something, being willing to feel.
So with full body listening, if you're triggered in a situation or in a fight with your partner or a boss says something to you at work or whatever it is, how would you react?
You have to take 5. You do have to take space from the person who you in that moment are sure did it to you, because they didn't really do it to you, very rarely,
Sometimes they did.
Sometimes they did. But even if they did do it to you, the degree to your reaction is yours. We have to be responsible. 2 people could come in here now, be racist, and I totally freak out and have a meltdown and you think, what an idiot, but aren't having an emotional reaction. The same stimulus came in, I'm freaking out, you're not. It's because I have that time bomb in me or whatever. Someone came in here being patriarchal, I might be like laughing and you got all cross with your hand on your hip.
Wow, you're really going to keep going with this one.
Yeah, I was thinking how much we're going to push the sacred fool side of it and start really being coarse. Anyway.
Do you not believe in the patriarchal world?
I think I do believe in it, and I believe that I've been working with a lot of men and women around this, and this might not go down too well, but there's this great...
I'll use full body listening.
Okay, we want to lead the men back to the women. We want to free the men from the bondage of their sexually incontinent, ignorant ancestors that have created this whole system. And so the men alive on the planet today are in two groups. The ones that still are in the old patriarchal things and have a whole different imbalance around men and women's just power and value in the world. And there are a lot of awake men who know that's all bullshit and don't want any part of that old patriarchal thing. And they're doing their best with their own feminine qualities to navigate this very, very masculine-driven world. Because the women have been so understandably wounded by what's been going on, it's very difficult for them to welcome the men back unconditionally. So it's to train or to come with a new generation of men who don't want to be part of the patriarchy. It's still a big challenge to make those men welcome and not have them on the hook for everything. And unless those two things happen simultaneously, it's like reparations during apartheid, unless there can be some sort of a system. This is what I want to create in the world. When you ask me about the more beautiful world, what I really want to focus on creating now is more events and conversations and not exactly workshops, but happenings where men and women talk to each other the way that black people and white people did at the end of apartheid. And it's not about blame, and it's not, but it may be there apologies and blames in it, but it's about everyone welcoming each other back and saying, hey, we're taking this step towards each other, that we both want a beautiful world where the men are welcomed by the women and the women are welcomed by the men, and everyone values each other and values their differences. And now also you might identify sometimes more as a man than as a woman, and who knows where that thing's all leading. But it's a step towards each other, where everyone has to sacrifice the blame, and they have to sacrifice the self-righteousness, and they have to, in a way, while still grieving and healing the wounds, they have to sacrifice the badge of honor that the wounds give you and the superiority. And there's a kind of a huge sacrifice in a way that's maybe feel very unfair to a lot of women, to sort of let men off, the new men off the hook. And so there has to be a home to lead the men back to. And that's why I think it has to be a mutual thing. It's no easy task. I'm not saying, women should just get over it. I'm saying there needs to be a huge amount of work within just the women to kind of make a group decision that we even want the men back so that they can be brought back.
I see what you're saying. And I feel like women do this, and they do it, and they're constantly doing it throughout all of these years of whether there's been a patriarchy or not. Women have kept raising men, they've kept marrying men, they've kept living with men, they've kept cooking dinner and doing all of the other things that they do and being supportive. And I mean, I know there are women now that are coming out as being really angry and it seems like it's against. I think that's just a release of, it's like there's a time that suddenly it's okay to say some of the things that haven't been okay to say for a number of years. And so there's a release in that, and we have to see it as something that has stages to it. I think there's more than two kinds of men. There are men on this new man side, open to their feminine and have all of that language, but yet don't really understand what it means. Or that the patriarchal conditioning runs so deep that it's easy to kind of say that, but then the behaviour still comes into the old way. Some behaviour.
It will.
And same with women. Women have also been living under the patriarchy too. And so they will have behaviours that are indicative of that. It is really complicated.
It is. And there's so many aspects to it which are resentful on both sides, because the men, there's a great phrase, I read it somewhere recently, where it says, the child who is rejected by the village will burn it down to feed its warmth. The men who are having to work so hard to not be tarnished with the same brush, or whatever you say, there is a huge resentment, among men of having to make up for their sexually incontinent and violent ancestors. I think it will be it's not a black and white thing. It's not suddenly you wake up to it and then you're free of all your conditioning. It's amazing that it's only recently, only a month ago, we're now in 2018 for the people in the year 3096 who are listening to this. Only recently, what's his name, Cumberbatch actor, has said, I'm not taking any roles where the woman isn't paid the same amount. And we were still in the dark ages that would even be so recent, that they even needed to have that referendum recently in Ireland is unbelievable. Isn't it incredible that it's 2018 and that's still and much of the world, places like Saudi Arabia where we are routinely getting our petrol from. Nearly everybody who's listening to this fills up their car from some oil, profiting someone who's last week is part of a culture where they stone women to death if they don't like what they're doing. So, it's very hard to cut all behavior, And I would love it if we could do something with oil, like if there was some solidarity we could do to the women of those places where they're stoned to death, and the women's rights is just like absolutely in the dark ages. If there was some way through the non-filling up of our cars, or could somebody come up with a petrol station that doesn't source its oil from those countries? We could all fill up our cars there, and maybe would that make a difference? I don't know. I would love to do something more solidarity for this Me Too thing is very valid, and also there's another level that, yes, please do wear a nice black dress at the Oscars for the Me Too, whatever, but why are these women not all getting together and forcing the governments? Why is there not more of a movement to help the women who would forget Me Too, being stoned to death? Can we not use some of this Me Too energy to help some of the people who are, in a much worse state? I would love if that could be achieved.
Things are slow to change, painfully slow. I mean, it's been painful for me. I used to be very I need to change things, and I've softened in that because I've realised that was also my ego that was doing that. But my heart still breaks constantly with what's happening at the Mexican border and the kids being separated. It's like, how do we process that when we're watching things like that? And how do we really find a way to do something that is meaningful and actually can create the shift that we want in our hearts?
I think we've all got to just keep doing our own bit. And that sounds like such a cliche, but have your good idea, try and corral people. I tried to get something going for the arms thing, about 5 years ago, and it didn't come to anything, but I'll keep trying. I've just got a thing about us being the gun runners of the world and profiting from war and weapons and bombs. Britain, and America, but, hugely about Britain disproportionately. And being the gun runners of the world while masquerading as the peacekeepers is just disgusting. And it's all in our name. It's all with our tax dollars or whatever, And I tried to get something together with the various groups 5 years ago, and it kindled for about 5 minutes and then didn't. But I'll keep trying. And the same with factory farming. We are in the dark ages with factory farming as well. The way animals are treated, and the way they just had a vote that said animals don't really have feelings or something. I want to do something drastic, like kidnap all their pets and do simulations of torture, not really hurt the pets, but freak them out. I've got an idea for changing factory farming massively that I would like to try and pull, and I think I can sell it. I think I can do it. And that's my latest mission. One of the latest missions is trying to get the big shops, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Waitrose, and whatever the other one is, if those 5 decision makers came together, they could change it for all the animals of the country. Like this ongoing Holocaust is going on every single day in the most disgusting, unbelievable way that you just can't believe. You literally can't. The only thing we can do is turn a blind eye. But, even listening to this, if you're not a vegetarian, every ham sandwich you eat, if it didn't say in great big red letters on the thing, organic farm bread, stroked every day, you can bet it lived and died in abject cruelty and agony. And so many people are a part of it. It's not like so I can't believe how far in the dark ages we are in our treatment of animals when it comes to factory farming. And I would really, really love to do something about that. And I think I can, if I get in the right doors, I can sell it to the right people. I think I could really make a difference there. And I'm a massive meat customer. I mean, I'm a vegetarian now, but if I manage to pull this off, I'm definitely eating meat again. This is why
you're doing it, so that you can enjoy meat.
So I can enjoy meat, exactly. If I can save that amount of animals, I'm having a fucking steak.
Welcome to Jamie's brain. We have to find what are the things that really rile us up and do what we can,
while looking at the inner version at the same time. The twin trail. Did you ever interview for your podcast Tim McMcCartney?
No, not yet.
You must get him. He's the guy that founded Embacombe, super guy. And he talks about the twin trail, which is whatever you're trying to fight out in the world, or whatever your mission is out in the world, it's always mirrored by something in your soul, your inner work. So if you're particularly moved by Occupy Wall Street or whatever, then you better every morning be looking at your own corruption in your own heart, even by the way that you told a white lie to your mum so that you didn't have to face her annoying, whatever, like really look at your own dishonesty in all ways if you're going to be on Occupy Wall Street. So whatever, I do really believe that what we are attracted to fight for or against is not only a huge part of our inner work. There's a reason we choose animals or guns or children or whatever. But I also think that I trust what life with a big L, life's genius, gets me excited about. I trust my compass as what excites me. I think that's kind of God's way of telling me what I should be doing, is what I feel excited and drawn to. And I trust that I'm a sort of a gentle and kind enough man that the things I'm drawn to will be good for everybody. You know, I trust that about myself. So I'm not worried about suddenly becoming a megalomaniac. If I am, I'll definitely be a benevolent dictator. But the things I feel excited to fight for, the projects like One Giant Leap or whatever that I feel excited to do, I believe that my great gifts to the world will come through the compass of me trusting my excitement and my attraction. I trust it. So I like that life will direct me to the things that are next. I don't have to plot what's the most important life I could lead just by following my attraction. Mm-hmm. Because I do care. I genuinely care, and I want the stuff, my produce, to be of service and to be good for the world. That I kind of feel led in the right directions, and all kinds of. I'm sure many of the people listening here had all kinds of synchronicities. That when you're in alignment, when you're doing, in inverted commas, what you're supposed to be doing, when you're in alignment, all kinds of great synchronicities happen, and wonderful gifts and supports, and when you go against your truth, even if it looked like it was going to make good money, it usually fucks up in some way that you get a cautionary tale out of it. So I've really learned to trust the feelings on the listening on the inside of the body for my true compass, the yin, listening of that to where I should be going.
But when you're in alignment, things can still be difficult. You still have challenges.
Big
you
time.
Still have to face
even more
your shadows and grow. It's not like suddenly. Sometimes I think there's this perception that you get into this like synchronous magic thing, and
it's comfortable
for magic
all the time.
And fairy dust and and everything.
No, sometimes you get
happens.
You get your Aikido training, don't you? Things don't all fall apart and you lost all the money and it was a disaster necessarily because you weren't living in alignment. It could be because you are at such a level that life's genius wants to send you that as a martial arts training to see how you respond to it. Are you going to turn into a victim and collapse, or are you going to rebuild? These things are often set to test us and to show us also when things all fall apart. They show us how many beautiful people we have around us that actually want to support us and help us. And they humble us to actually reach out for help and not be Mr. Big Shot who's always above it all. You actually have to sort of say, hey, I need help. And that's very intimate. That creates huge intimacy and long bonded friendships. I mean, those dark times are so full of treasure, full of illumination, full of leading us to compassion, leading us to appreciation of the people that help us, and nurses. And I don't know if you've ever been in hospital, but when you come out of hospital, whenever I've come out of hospital, I've been like the biggest champion of nurse. Like I want the nurses. I'm all about the nurses. I want the nurses to get a fair deal. All nurses come free to my workshops and all my events. I just think nurses are amazing. I wouldn't have that knowledge if I hadn't had some of the experiences where I needed a nurse. Also, my compassion for other people that I've had decades of panic attacks. My compassion, I know what hell smells like. And I know when I see someone else who has that too, I can really be in empathy with them, not necessarily solve all their problems, but I can really be with them and they can trust me and I can trust them. It's huge empathy comes from suffering and from challenges. So we are pruned, absolutely. And we're never going to have a life without any pain. But how we meet that pain, whether we make it a version of suffering and resistance, or we make it a version of how can I get the best out of this and be as responsible. How can I harvest this pain? Or how can I just allow this pain and be really self-caring and love myself in this pain? I've really learned to cancel a lot of appointments. It's flaky if you're a professional and you keep cancelling appointments. But I guess I'm just going to have to be flaky because me looking after my well-being on a super sensitive day is more important than keeping an appointment. Not out of disrespect, but out of respect, if anything. Like you were saying about leadership before, there are certain rules about you can't do it this way. They tried to tell Anita Roddick, you can't do it this way. How wrong they were. She sold her company for more than 600 million.
We had Sam on the show, another episode, and she told wonderful stories about how Gordon and Anita worked together. And
she's wonderful, Sam Roddick. Yeah. So it all comes down to listening. To make a beautiful world, always listening before acting. Stop, listen, feel. It's like the Green Cross code of correct practice. It's just like really let the listening guide us. You have to trust that life has some benevolent genius. You have to dare to trust. And that's a big question of like, Some people ask me, like, how do you definitely trust that it is a benevolent life, to be surrendered to it, you have to trust it. What I've discovered is that even if it's all bullshit, you're still going to have a better life doing it this way. So it actually doesn't matter if life has any intelligence in it whatsoever. Even if it's totally random chaos, you're going to have an easier time, a more rich, intimate, illuminated, and powerful time treating everything that comes. How can I harvest this? How can I be illuminated by this? How is this bringing me closer to intimacy, closer to fun, closer to knowledge of myself and others, and care and kindness and all the good things I love in my life? If that is your channel you're looking through, you're going to have a better life, whether there is or isn't a God. So it doesn't, in a way, matter if it's real or not. You're still going to have a better life living as if it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's still going to be more kindness, more intimacy, more compassion, all the things you want living that way. So whether there's a guy in the sky or a goddess in the sky or one of each with an elephant's trunk and a top hat, it doesn't matter.
Is that how you picture them?
That's Bill Hicks, when he had this funny thing about priests of both sexes being allowed into the church. He goes, yeah, okay, so there's now priests of both sexes I don't listen to. Fine, give him gills and a trunk, I might come to that service. I don't think it matters. I'm just really noticing that the things I value, the version I tell myself of everything, is what will define my reality. So someone could come home late from work, you've cooked a beautiful dinner, and they've come home late from work, and you can look at what just happened as, he doesn't care about me, I cooked this fucking beautiful dinner all day, I've slaved over, and he comes in half an hour late, and you're on a downer because you've looked at that version. From his point of view, he might have come back half an hour late because he was like, God, Amisha's cooked this fucking amazing dinner. I want to be so present with her for the whole evening. I don't want this fucking report I have to finish niggling at me that I haven't handed it in. I'm just going to work this extra half hour, hand it in. It's out of my life, and I can go back and just worship this woman. And so he's come back thinking that he's actually made a bid for, and everyone's just looking through their filters of what they expect. And if we can just remove that and look through the benevolent, give people the benefit of the doubt and realize that on examination, 8 out of 10 times I've got upset with people. When I really look at what happened, it was purely my preconceptions and filter that got me upset. They had totally innocent intentions. They were either trying to, and I put on them that meant this or that meant that, and the meanings that meant they didn't care, or that meant they didn't respect me, or I didn't matter, or all that bullshit was totally invented by me, and it was nothing to do with that. They were just tired, or it was nothing that I put it on. So to really be disciplined about the version I tell them, the meanings I attach to what just happened, is another really important way to create a more beautiful world. Don't believe the place your mind first goes. It's always defensive and often wrong. Like I was parking a couple of days ago and some guy came up speaking to me in Spanish. I was in Spain and he was saying, blah, 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 blah. And I thought he was telling me I wasn't allowed to park there. So immediately I was like, fuck off, don't tell me what to do. Inside, I didn't say that. I just immediately felt combative with him and like just thought, don't tell me what to do. And then I got out of the car and I realised my back bumper was touching the car behind me. He was just trying to help me. He was just trying to say, hey mate, you're pressing against that car. You might want to roll forward. But my preconception, melodramatic sort of, persecution complex, decided he was trying to tell me what to do. And I was totally wrong. And I'm always wrong. The way my mind leaps in to judge someone or add a negative meaning, or it's always wrong, nearly always wrong. So to not believe that first knee-jerk place the mind goes is a really great game.
So this is an important thing about listening, that it's not listening to your mind or the first place that your mind goes. DJs.
Yeah, exactly. No, listening to the space after the crowded nonsense. Yeah, listen to the space.
And so how do you create more space if there isn't any?
You leave the room. Like if I'm in an argument with you and, you've burnt the dinner again or something, if I was upset that you burnt the dinner, I'd probably just, to create space, is go into a different room, where you're not triggered. A lot of couples think that they have to fight it out or that they have to solve it right now. Mm-hmm. I'm triggered, you're triggered, right, we can't leave it on a fight, we have to process this. Don't process it when you're all triggered. It's a stupid time to process it. Go and process yourself and feel your own charge. Feel the annoyance. They might still be totally wrong, this other person. They could be a total fucking arsehole. But you still have to deal with the charge in your own body first. So whatever it takes to take space, the last thing you want to do is take space, because it's so wonderful and self-righteous to be in the right and to show them that they're wrong and to let everyone know and complain or condemn. We're so outraged that someone didn't behave according to our model. But usually it was our model that hurt us, that we expect everybody to have exactly the same idea of honesty, exactly the same idea of what's fair, what's not fair. And when they contravene it, it's like, how could they? It's like, they just don't have the same model as you, and to expect all 7 billion people on this planet to share your values exactly and always treat you the way you think you would treat them is actually self-harming. It's totally stupid. But yeah, you have to be able to carry this off, you have to be able to return to your inside before you deal with the outside. And that might mean going into another room. That might mean, storming off, but without wanting them to secretly chase you. It might mean really taking space and then being, how can I be responsible for myself first and my co-creation, and then go and have a boundary conversation and say that's not okay. But it'll be your adult saying that's not okay, not your regressed child who's in massive reaction. So you have a reaction, you're now a child. All your values and everything you think is childish. You should write that email. How could you, blah, 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 fuck you, send. That's the child in you doing that. And you want the adult to be the one that sends the emails. So you go and attend to the child and you hear it go, fuck them, fuck, fuck, fuck. But you certainly don't give it the email or the mouth or the telephone. We all too often do. And then later we get apologetic. Oh, I'm so sorry, that wasn't me. And it really wasn't you. It was one of your demons jumped in and got the mouth. So you've got to somehow find space so that demon gets met by you, that regressed child of tantrum, of how could injustice. You go, yeah, that is totally unjust. You're right to be really upset. It's all right. And you feel their feelings of sadness or grief or whatever, and let that emotion be felt yourself, you as the parent of that child, like you're slightly schizo, you're in two places at once, being the parent and the child. And then when it's calmed down a bit, they can still be, you still think that person might be a total arsehole, but you're going to deal with them as an adult, not as a child trying to make them not hurt you. And that way you're powerful when you deal with them as an adult. When you deal with them as a child, your child triggers their child, you have a fight, you don't speak to them for 3 years, and you're sure they're an arsehole. But think how many people you don't deal with anymore in your life because you think are an arsehole, but just they were maybe having a bad day, or you expected more from them than they had the capacity to give, or like so many people are in my dungeon who don't really have any business being there, just because of my filter that day decided that needed to make them the demon so that I could feel okay about myself, so I didn't have to feel my feelings.
And so how has that process been of learning to feel your feelings? Like, did you always, or was there a turning point where you started to pay more attention?
Yeah, I think it was when I was dealing with these panic attacks, I had to find different ways to meet them rather than be totally taken over by them. And one of the best things I got taught was this meditation where, and you don't have to do it just with panic attacks, with anything that hurts. It could be your bad shoulder, it could be a headache. It's great for headaches, this process, is you take the radar through your body and you kind of make a 3D image, like an MRI, of the headache, let's say, and you go, well, where is it? And you kind of feel in your head where it is, what shape is it? You can kind of see what shape it is, and you can ask yourself then all the time, gently breathing, what color is it? And you kind of find, if it had a color, it would be green or whatever, what texture is it? Is it smoky, or is it like gooey, or is it throbbing? Is it still? You ask all these questions, really asking, really looking, examining curiously. And then when you go round again, and you ask the same questions, it's a bit smaller, it's moved a bit, now it's not green, it's dark green, and it's not so solid. You do that 10 times, the headache's usually gone. So I've had to find lots of different ways, and with emotional pain, I kind of do a similar thing of actually, like, it feels like depression or grief. And this is in my books, I'm not being too repetitive, but this is a really amazing technique. So you'll feel, I'm driving along and I get hit by this cataclysmic wave of depression and grief, like you do. And it's not, it's not about anything in particular, maybe. But of course, my mind leaps in and starts thinking about the bank account or the relationship or something to match that feeling to, because the mind is so busy trying to save me from feeling bad. It wants to find something to find a solution to. It thinks, if I can solve the relationship or the money problem, that feeling will go away. But instead of doing that into the mind to solve it and start head fucking, I go into the body and I feel that emotional pain. Let's call it depression. Then what I do is I go, okay, while I'm calling it depression and grief, it's totally loaded with all the depression and grief of my life and other people's lives and things they've told me, and depression and grief poetry and songs, and it's loaded. So I'm going to just try something. I'm not going to call it depression and grief. I'm going to call it schlump, a made up word that doesn't mean anything. So the moment I go, okay, and I'd feel that feeling just like we did with the radar, as if for the first time, because it's no longer depression and grief, it's slump. What does slump feel like? I'm feeling slump. And suddenly it's really neutralized the resistance and suffering part of this experience. It still may not feel very nice, but it's certainly not in the level of suffering and resistance it was when it crashed in as depression and grief. Now it's slump. Oh, this is a curious feeling. It feels kind of like airy in my solar plexus and not very pleasant pressure on my throat. And so now you're a bit interested in it. And then I go, okay, let's go to another level. What if we call it love? What if it's one of the 10,000 names of the goddess? And not all experiences of love are fluffy. Some of them are raw as fuck. Like, again, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche would say, like, the raw heart of the warrior, where even a mosquito landing on your heart is like agony. That's how we walk through this world, this raw, this open, this sensitive. This is how, we want to walk through the world. Then I say, oh, it's love. And now I'm going, oh, this, suddenly I'm not having a totally different experience to transform. And by feeling it, I'm a big believer that the body has so much accumulation of this pain that, like Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body, it is constantly in its genius plumbing, trying to flush out that old constipated emotional shit that is creating all these overreactions in our lives. Because when someone pisses you off, you don't just feel the anger of what they just did, but all the people that ever treated you like that since the beginning of time, because of the unexpressed emotion in us. So the body's constantly trying to flush that out. And I always joke it's using one of the 7 spiritual anuses that some people call chakras. It's trying to make that thing felt on the way out. So while I'm doing this thing in the car that used to be depression and grief, and I'm feeling that sensation, I'm actually, by being just simply present with my feelings, my genius body's plumbing system is now flushing out the accumulation of all that shittiness. So that is a really, really strong and doable. You can do that at the traffic lights. It's like anyone can do it.
When did you start having panic attacks?
My first official panic attack was when I was about 17, but actually recently, I because I've been looking into a bit more trauma release therapy, I've realized that actually there were some earlier ones. I mean, I think the womb, I was having my biggest panic attack. I had a really dodgy womb experience. When I used to have times, the main one I first remember was on an acid trip, aged 16 or 17. And I don't know what configuration of things happened, that it just went really wrong. And I think that I don't think that created the panic attacks, but I think it took a door that was maybe more firmly locked and put it on the latch. But yeah, I just remember I used to have this experience after that, where anytime it was getting dark, anytime I was with a girl I fancied, anytime various other things, I had to sleep a night away from home, I would just start getting these really full-on terror, absolutely not triggered by anything, and out of the blue, bizarre, proper full-body adrenaline, galloping heart. I never thought I was going to die, though. I just thought it was an unendurable pain. Mm-hmm. I never felt in danger during it, although the body was having the biggest danger experience it could possibly manifest. I was never worried. I just didn't want to feel this horrible feeling, And then once I went to a doctor, because in those days I didn't even have panic attacks. No one used that term yet. I was in some doctor's waiting room, and someone was kind to me. I don't know if it was the woman bringing me a glass of water while I waited or something. Someone just looked at me with super kind eyes, and I just went. I was just sobbing. And I came out of it, and then the panic attack had just totally gone. And I realized at that moment that a panic attack is blocked tears. Or blocked emotion, but in my case, tears. And it's always the way now. If I feel one coming, if somehow I'm jet lagged or something has happened where I may be in danger of having a bit of leaky adrenaline floating in my system, cortisol flying around, I have some YouTube clips of people of kindness that just set me off, just have me weeping, sobbing, you can't, ridiculously, snot everywhere, ridiculous. And when I can catch a wave, it's like surfing. I don't know if it's the same as a woman, but as a man, to catch a wave of crying and let it really make the sobs come is quite difficult sometimes. It's you catch it, but part of the brain shuts it down, and to really catch one and let it find its tipping point, so you just can sob and have snot everywhere and really discharge is can be hard. So I've got these YouTube links that I watch to set me off, and it's I need to keep adding to them, because sometimes you get used to them and they're not having the same effect anymore. But I've always said, if only there was a crying pill our whole culture would be saved. If scientists could come up with a pill, and when you took it, you just burst into tears, there'd be no more war.
You think that much?
Yeah, I do. I think it would transform the whole place. It's all blocked tears.
It's the patriarchy again, Jamie.
It is. It's the patriarchy.
Women cry a lot.
Yeah.
When we get together and we're like, no one else would cry at work, and then you find out when you talk to other women about all of these times that they have to go into the toilets in all these places and have a quick cry and then like go back out and
permission. See, the men don't have quite that permission even in this day and age. We need to really, like, I talk a lot about crying also because I want to be a walking permission slip for people to think, like, it's not such a big deal to cry all the time. Like, I love crying. Whenever I can cry, I think of it's a great blessing. It's like doing like the most beautiful dump.
I know a lot of men that have given themselves permission to cry but just can't, and it just physically they can't seem to.
Consciously they've given themselves permission. They haven't found the
yeah.
unconscious place that hasn't got the permission yet.
Yeah,
they should come around and play, and then we'll sort them out.
Book a session with Jamie if you want to cry.
Yeah.
Have you had a lot of shame around that you've had to work through around panic attacks, around your emotions?
Yeah. I've had shame in lots of different places, but not actually big time shame that I don't want anyone to know about it, but just times when it's come up in a time where it feels shameful in the moment. Like, I used to have a time where any girl I fancied, I would just want to puke.
It's really attractive.
Exactly. It's not attractive. Thank you. There you are. There's the shame. Did you hear that, viewers? Listeners at home, straight into the knee-jerk shaming from Amisha there. So therefore, thank you for playing out that theatre.
Jamie was asking for it. If you don't know Jamie, he asks for these things and you have to.
Wow, that's so me too. She was asking for it. I had to give it to her. Oh my God, the double standard of the matriarchy.
I'm just going to laugh that one off. There's nothing else for it.
Yeah, that's good. Probably time run the end music quickly before people hear the truth.
Is there such thing as truth?
Well, there's these. I keep coming back to these versions. I'm sure that on the dimension where there is absolute truth, there is. I mean, if I poured this glass of water on you, it would be truthful to say I had just poured that glass of water on you. I mean, of course, there's truth, but our notion of truth could do with a lot of second looking. Like I said, the first place the mind goes, it acts like it's truth. The voices in my head, the victim, the inner critic, the slave driver, they do such an incredible ventriloquist impression of me that they make me think it's the truth, and above all they make me think it's my truth. But we all know later when we've calmed down it wasn't at all. Be careful what you make your truth. There are a lot of people that are looking through life so invested in the suffering that it's just the drama channel all the time, and people leave, how are you not too bad? Obviously quite bad, but today not too bad. And like, oh, it was so bad on the bus. We're just totally sort of so about our suffering stories, and it's just a knee-jerk way to get each other's attention, because we live in a Christianized society that says the more you suffer, the more God loves you. And so we push our suffering, So a lot of people will live in the suffering channel all the time because they feel safest there. A lot of people will...
We do that, but we also say I'm fine when I'm not. Like people say...
Often that's another form of the suffering, though. Mm-hmm. The suffering channel. I'm too stoic. I'm being stoic. That's all part... It's another inverse part for me of the suffering channel, is being stoic, is suffering silently, mm-hmm. Not getting the support you need. And then there's the horror channel, where it's like, absolute victim in the world and Trump and what's happening in the environment. There's that channel going on. But there's also the comedy channel, that when you fall on your ass and you get another parking ticket, that your melodrama of your life, melodrama, is really just a Mr. Bean slapstick show written by the angels from another perspective. So you can see the adversity and the difficult things that happen to you in your life as comedy. Like, for example, like dealing with one's mother. If you've got a difficult relationship with your mother, it can be the deepest mother wound, or it can be the funniest, ridiculous, that I'm never going to get through to this woman and I keep trying. It's like a sort of a sitcom of constantly failing to get through to this person, or them failing to get through to you. It's actually quite funny, and it's also tragic, and it's also deeply healing, and it's also where I'm most stuck. It's like, whatever channel you want to look through, you can look at it as the dramatic version, the comedy version, the horror version, the numbed out version is another very popular one. The addict going from screen to screen to, crowded out with dopamine version. There are all these channels available, and you ask, is there truth? They're all true depending on which one you want to look through. If you and I are sitting opposite each other and there's a teapot and a teacup, I could look at it and go, the teapot is on the left and the cup is on the right. And from where you're sitting, you go, no, the teapot is on the right, the cup is on the left. And we're both telling totally telling the truth. So there's no, people will make true the way they are seeing things. And that's something where we can be powerful, is we can decide. Sometimes I've been in the shittiest mood. And this is how great the brain is, and why mantras and neuroplasticity repetition really does work. The brain believes anything. So you walk down the street, you're feeling really shit. Try this. You just put your shoulders back, put a great big grin on your face, and just say, my life is fucking amazing. This is the best day ever. I feel great. It sounds totally wacky and like kind of spiritual bypassing, but just try it as an exercise. You can make your brain believe that you're having the best day ever just by saying it 10 times and putting your shoulders back and walking like it's the best day. I mean, it's such a great move. Fake it to make it is a cliche for a reason. You can spend 5 minutes and totally transform the mood of your day and just make a joyful story true instead of a negative story true. None of them are in themselves empirically true, but you can make it joyful or painful depending on how committed you want to be to that reality. And there's a lot of people out there very committed to the suffering version and will even be irritated by me saying what I just said. If you're feeling irritated right now by what I just said, then sorry.
But it's also a contradiction to what you were saying half an hour ago.
Probably.
And I suppose it's about finding the balance, because if you're faking it till you make it and looking for the sunny side, then you could be numbing out, bypassing from what you need to feel.
Yeah, totally. I'm not saying anytime you feel bad, just put a grin on your face and teeth, tits and shoulders and say life's great. I'm not saying that. It's a proof that so many of the negative feelings we're feeling are actually a bit unnecessary. You start head fucking about something to do with a problem with somebody at work or money or family or something like that. And we can go off down a road of pessimism and start having arguments in our head with people, giving them a shit script that they never even said of what's going to happen tomorrow when I have a bad, difficult conversation with that person. And those kind of drumming up that negative feeling is not feelings that need to be felt. That's just us going on a roller coaster of negativity for no reason with our mind, just falling asleep to our negativity. There's a difference between that and actual feelings needing to come up, But I'm still a big believer, whatever feelings are coming up, just turn towards them, be interested in them, rather than label them with, oh, I mustn't feel this. Just being interested in them. And know that you can change how you're feeling at any time as well. There's no prizes for suffering.
Mm-hmm. Is that true, though? Can you always change how you're
feeling? Quite a lot. I mean, not always. You come up to me and say, your kid's just been, I'm not going to be able to at any moment snap my fingers. But I've had this experience in the last few months quite a lot, where I have, through this slump thing, I've realized that how I experience what I used to call crushing waves of depression and grief can be just experienced as neutral sensation if you decide to.
You don't use quite so many dramatic words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or if you're willing to feel it. A lot of the negativity and the pain is the resistance to feeling it, because we think that feeling it will be much worse than it actually turns out to be. We've built pain into such a phantom. But if you actually turn towards it, it's not nearly the huge phantom agony that, like childbirth, he says, having never, it's going to annoy a lot of people. From a patriarchal point of view, childbirth is a lot of fuss. No, but seriously, a lot of the pain of childbirth is obviously because it's painful, but a lot of it is how much fucking negative thought forms have been put in women's head about how, agony and Adam and Eve and pain till the end of days, and the mentality that has been given to women around childbirth, very much it creates a tension that adds a lot to how painful it could be. And you see a lot of these women like Binny Dansby and Roma, who work with women to have ecstatic birth.
Roma Norris
is totally achievable. It's like these women, like Binny had an orgasm when she gave birth to her second child. There is a way to do this. This isn't pie in the sky hippie stuff. There is a way to totally use the 9 months of the gestation period to be letting go of shadows and softening and yielding and, welcoming rather than being terrified of that day when the birth will come. And I'm telling you with a different attitude. I'm not saying everyone can have a pain-free birth, but there's a huge leap from how birth is looked at today to what it could be. We've got miles and miles to go. And some women are lucky enough to come across natural birth methods and have a very different experience than what the mainstream would look at as the screaming, agony of birth.
And then with all of it, there's balance and acceptance again, because I know lots of spiritual women, a few that have had very painful births when they were going in really hoping for an orgasmic experience.
It's awful that people use that if they haven't tamed their slave driver inside, they use all their spiritual knowledge to make themselves feel, I did all the right things and all the meditations and it was still a really difficult birth. They look at it as God's scorecard that they sort of fail. Unless you've had an ecstatic birth, you've failed spiritually as a woman to be quite the goddess that you could have been. It's such bollocks. It's all competitive, spiritual, materialistic nonsense. We'll do the best with what we've got. When we do the ecstatic, active birthing stuff, you're creating it to be the most likely that it will be great. But you're not controlling it that it definitely will be great. God knows what will happen. Who knows what medical condition or what bad luck or the cords around the babies. Who knows what's going to go on. We just make it as likely as possible that we have the most loving, kind, conscious pathway. But I feel gutted for women that wanted a natural birth and it didn't happen. And they somehow looked at it as like they lost their goddess stripe in some way. It's totally unfair. This brainwashing making us all so competitive is heartbreaking.
And so going from birth to death.
Yes.
Do you think about dying?
Much more these days, I do, yeah. I do think about dying, particularly also because I've been feeling so good for quite a while that I'm thinking like, is this what happens just before you die? I think I'm about to die because I feel so good.
And quite a while, it's like 3 months.
Well, it's definitely, 3 months of that level of high, or when I have like a 3-month period, you just think, shit, I must be about to die. I think about death a bit, particularly because my favourite teacher is Ram Dass, and I'm finishing a film with him at the moment called Becoming Nobody. Sorry, there's been lots of different titles. I forgot which one we elect. I think we're going to call it Becoming Nobody. And it is all about, really, how to die. I wanted to call it How to Die, but no one apart from me thinks that's the best title.
I think it's brilliant.
Because you've seen the rough cut of it, haven't you? Don't you think calling it How to Die would be perfect? We just can't get people behind that idea yet. Maybe by the time it comes out, everyone will realise that's the best title. Till then, we're going with Becoming Nobody.
Subtitle: How to Die?
No, they don't. They're not. They don't. They think it's too on the nose. Fair enough. I wanted to call it Famous Last Words, but that's pushing it even too far.
I think Ram Dass would have found that funny, no?
He does find it funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, he talks a lot about dying being this great adventure. And if you are totally, we were talking about the channels. If you're only in the channel of ego and form, that does die. So most people live in the emotional channel and the channel of form and only seeing the world through you and I and ego and Amisha and Jamie and my family and your family. If you identify with the soul, if you look through the eyes of the soul, which is trusting and kind and doesn't die, then you're not going to be so scared at the point of death. But if you've totally identified with ego and the part that does die, the more you've totally ignored the spiritual soul that doesn't die and totally invested all your energy into the ego that does, to that degree, you'll be scared of death. And he gives this great speech at the end of the movie, like saying, try and look at it as this next great transformation, the next great adventure. He says it so beautifully, it's amazing. And so, having been editing this film for the last whatever, it has made me think about it much, much more. And I've had quite a few times in my dreams where I've died. And I haven't minded. But that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen when I'm a flesh and blood person. Mm-hmm. But I've had dreams where I'm definitely going to die, like dreams where I'm on a plane, it's definitely going to crash, there's no question we're going to live, it's over. And I've just lain down on the ground and put my cheek to the floor and just relaxed. That's what happened in the dreams anyway. Mm. I think it's incredible that we die every day. I think it's incredible that we die, that this ends. It ends for all of us. We're all going to have, it ends. Everyone, whether you're John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix, John F. Kennedy, Jesus, the human thing ends for every one of us. And there's a beautiful, I think it's Bukowski or someone who said, we all die. If we really took that on board, we'd be so much kinder to each other. We're all in the queue to leaving and being kind of insignificant from that point. I mean, even if you were massive, when was the last time you thought of Jimi Hendrix?
I don't know.
Exactly, and he was Jimi Hendrix. So just think how few people are going to think about you and me. It doesn't matter. They're all looking at their phones. So all grandiosity gone. It's sobering. And we do a lot of the stuff on the Mojo Blast workshop especially, but a lot of them have... I make all my decisions. If I've ever got a dilemma, one of my criteria for deciding what I will do is how I will feel about it on my deathbed. So should I spend that extra £40 on the nice bag with the good zip? Yes. On my deathbed, I would thank God I got the good bag with the nice zip. I'm glad I gave myself that, rather than have £40 more in the bank, in the cemetery bank. So I use the deathbed, how you will feel on your deathbed, as a great compass for living your life in alignment. We do this really cool game that I'll finish us off with, if anyone wants to do some homework, where you imagine yourself on your deathbed. Really, today is, because when you die, it's going to be today. It's going to be just like this. It's not going to be any different. It's just going to be a day like you, feeling like you are now. So imagine yourself on your deathbed and really imagine today really is the day you're crossing over, and think of who you'll be letting go of and saying goodbye to, and just really put yourself there. And then I ask people to choose 3 beings that they would like to have with them around the bed as they cross over. And this can be anything from Buddha and Jesus to your old pet dog to your family to a character from a book, David Copperfield, anybody you like. And you meditate there and be with them for a bit. And then you go into a meditation and you write through their eyes, through their kind eyes loving you. You write 3 versions in list form of their idea of your life from now until death, best lived. What they would want for you from now till you die, each one of them 3 different lists. And then you have your manifesto for your life of what's really true for you. So your deathbed will let you know really what your life is about.
And do you use these
Very
in
much
your
so.
decision
Oh,
making?
yes, all the time. Yeah, no, I do. I use my joy more than anything. Like I'm trying to sort of, be much more, not just go, like sometimes someone wants to, I've got myself in trouble, like with some big investor that wants to fly around on a helicopter and pay for some retreat center. And I know at the time this person is a sociopath, or this is just like, not, like you think, oh yeah, but if they paid for a whole retreat center and I didn't need to travel so much, everyone would come to where it's like you can get seduced and ignore the truth, which is this isn't a good idea. But really now, like I'm feeling like I'm really beginning to trust my compass. And I'm still going to have cataclysmic suffering disasters, and I'm not going to be free of those, but I can certainly give them less resistance and meet the pain with more curiosity instead of rejection. It's going to be there anyway. You might as well get, like lemonade. You might as well make lemonade out of the lemons. The wall's fallen down. You might as well make the best of everything without being, la-da-da, this isn't happening, it was all meant to be. Still feel the pain of it, but in the context of, how can I illuminate myself, have more compassion, be kinder, more self-caring? What can I learn? Just use it, harvest it properly. Be efficient. That's eco. That's what's sustainable when we come to being eco in the world. Use your suffering sustainably. Use it. Eco it. Use the things out of it. Recycle it. You can get lots of things out of your pain, illuminations, compassion, all the things we're listing. That's recycling the pain rather than trying to get rid of it and put it on the dump heap. So, be eco with your suffering.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's funny when you're talking about your idea of dying and it feeling peaceful. I've had a few near-death experiences and they've all been remarkably peaceful. I mean, they haven't. There's been like a 4-wheel drive pickup truck on me or something quite dramatic for everyone else, but for me they've been really just very like kind of sweet experiences. Afterwards not so sweet, because then there's like injuries and then
now
there's
you're back in the human realm
stuff
again.
coming up and and PTSD and whatever it is, but then what I find remarkable is that even with that knowledge, that then sometimes I might be doing something, I don't know, like crossing a bridge on foot on a trail, and like I will get fear. Or last night one of my friends suggested that we go on a bike ride that's like 25 minutes and that involves roads, and I suddenly was like, we need to not talk about this anymore, because I was just, the idea of it, I was like, this is really scary. It's funny with fear, and that it can be just little things where it really comes out.
Absolutely. It's extraordinary how a tiny trigger can set off a huge PTSD or CPTSD, which is our new buzz phrase, reaction. We've all got the Pete Walker book, I hope. CPTSD, everyone should read it. It's amazing what little things can have such huge reactions, and that's where we have to be disciplined to not attach that reaction to what just happened. We have to know our insides well enough to know that that was my overreaction, that wasn't proportional to what just happened.
So CPTSD is it's
complex post-traumatic. It wasn't just like one bomb that dropped or one abusive, like experience. It was like the gradual wearing down of your self-esteem through the looks of disgust from your parents through your childhood can give you CPTSD, for example. It's like a gradual.
There's an institute that's looking at how we also get this from just everything that's happening in the world, especially because we're watching it on TV, seeing things live constantly. So it's like we're there in all of those different things and we're experiencing them.
It's extraordinary. And we're all very sensitive. I mean, someone made a lot of money with the book Highly Sensitive People. Such a good scam, because who isn't? I mean, I don't know anyone who's not a highly sensitive person. And living in this pace with this many wireless connections around us and this speed of Facebook to Instagram to Twitter to whatever's the next thing, I was just away and I noticed that I must be relaxed and happy because I reached for the book more than I reached for the screen. And this dopamine addiction is another fast-paced thing. We are so sensitive. It's amazing that we are all surviving, but what we realize is that we've all got a glass jaw. We're all so fragile that it only takes a small thing to send us into these massive reactions. So it's like on the surface it looks like we're all together, but actually it only takes your partner speaking to you in a tone of voice you don't like and it can wreck a whole 5 days or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like we've become so fragile, and I think that the key to it all is lightening up. We could really do all of us with a lot less melodrama and a lot more giving people the benefit of the doubt and lightening up about how important how I'm treated is, and just fucking calm down. Our sense of entitlement is out of control. For me, the path that I want to teach is the path of lightening up and making everything much less of a big deal. So you've still got an ego, but you're directing it more with your soul than with what I want is so important and how I'm treating is so important. This I thing is just out of control. And if you're a creator, listen to the Elizabeth Gilbert TED Talk, or maybe it's not a TED Talk, I think it is, about the muse and about creativity. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. How we've only very recently taken our creativity so personally. It used to be the muse in the walls. And if you turned up with your pen, if it wasn't a good poem that day, it was the muse's fault, not you. Now it's like all the credit comes to you and, ideas that you spent no effort generating. It was so precious, like, my idea, how dare you steal my idea? What exactly did you do for this idea? It just popped into your head. It's amazing how precious we get about something we did nothing to create. We've made it all much too, this is the ego crazy thing, it's so materialistic.
When you were a musician, more of a musician and less of workshops.
Yeah, that's a very nice way to put it.
Then you had to, your music also paid the bills and you needed the money for your family. So then it adds this pressure. How did you kind of keep connected to the gods of creativity during?
It was still always enjoyment. It was because I think it was lucky that because it did, like with Faithless, it did so well so quickly that there was never any scarcity to get hung up on. It just all kind of took care of itself. So yeah, I never really got into a situation where it's like, oh, come on, creativity, we need to make money. I've just been luckily not had to worry about that. Even in projects that didn't make money, like One Giant Leap, it was a big cult thing, but it wasn't like royalty. I've never has me or Duncan ever had a royalty check from One Giant Leap from either film or album ever in our lives, not one penny. But our sense of value, we were talking about this right at the beginning of this podcast, is different. It's not just the money, it's the illumination, it's the intimacy. Did we talk about this? Or maybe it was someone earlier. When I'm teaching companies about value in companies right now is just money. How much money did it make that quality? But now for me, value is money, yes, but also how much learning was there in the experience? That's a big value. How intimate and how much lovely, really deep connection did I have with the other people involved in it is another huge value. How much fun was there and laughter and lightness? And how much learning. Maybe I said that already, but those are the 5. So I've always drawn the value from my projects from those 5 things more than just from did it make enough money.
And so if someone is feeling pressured around their creativity, just lightening up, enjoying the other elements of the value.
If you're feeling pressured about your creativity, this is what I would say, and I'll try and do the short version of this, that basically, like we were saying before, we're devotional to our kids, we're listening to what they want, and we're being the space around them to sort of make them thrive. If you look at your creativity as something you are devotional to, it's like a unicorn, not to be too new agey and hippie. Let's say we call it a unicorn. People are so want money from their project, and they so want everyone to think their project's great, that you end up saddling your unicorn like a donkey to carry your self-esteem issues up a hill, and it's not its job. So if you're blocked in your creativity, you've probably saddled your unicorn with bags, and take the bags off it. It's not meant to get you self-esteem. Your art, it's not meant to get you money. If it does, fantastic, and that would be great. But to go in with, it's only worthwhile if it makes me a certain amount of money or gets me a certain amount of self-esteem, it fucks it up from the beginning. If you don't care, you just enjoy the creative process, then the river, the aperture of great creative genius that comes through is wide open, because it's not for anything. Just like when you were a little kid, you only started being shit at drawing when it was to make mummy proud, mummy to say it's a nice picture, and then suddenly you're screwed. It's for something now. But creativity can just be the joy of doing it. One Giant Leap was purely, wouldn't it be great if? It wasn't for mankind, it was for us. It was like, wow, hip-hop and African chanting and da-da-da, purely for our own enjoyment. We were just swept away with, same with Faithless. Faithless was Rollo's idea of, wouldn't it be great to do an album that had all different musical styles on it? My musical taste is very diverse. Why are albums always either hip-hop or house or ballads, or why don't we do an album? And that was Faithless was one of the first ever albums that had hip hop and house and songs on it. But it wasn't because we thought that would make money. It was because Rollo wanted to do that. And so when you're taken by the idea of a creative thing because it turns you on, that's the time to do it. If it's not turning you on and you think, then you might not be doing the right creative thing. It's a devotional thing to your muse, to your attraction, to your fun. That's what creativity is, and hopefully it will make you money. The other thing about creativity, my last thing I'll say about that that's a useful tip, is that in order for the genius creation to come through, you have to be in the listening field we've been talking about, not the ego doing field, but the listening, surrendering field. That's when a great idea pops into your head in the space. But the ego is so busy not wanting to be shown up to not do a good creative project that it's so busy editing everything, it over-edits it on the way through and it won't let go. And the ego won't do a genius project. It'll do some pretty good ones, but it won't do the genius thing. Only the soul will. So for the genius project to happen, the ego has to go to sleep, and it doesn't want to let go. And that's what writer's block is the ego won't let go of the creative project process, and it over-edits things as it's coming. It's so busy looking to make sure it's not shit and that is this good enough, and it's over-editing it and pruning it before the thing's had a chance to flower. And you look at your guitar over the other side of the room and you feel that sinking feeling of, I can't write another shit song, because the ego won't. It's like a little child that refuses to go to sleep. It's too fun being awake. It won't go to sleep. And it's only when the ego will take a back seat and just stop and just let the listening take over. You listen for a song. You don't think up a song. Then genius will come through. But it can be quite hard to deliberately make the ego not be busy doing things. It's like, try not to think of hippopotamus, or try not to let the ego trust. So that I luckily have given so many talks now that I just know it will be okay. I never have any nerves before a talk now, because I just know that when I open my mouth and listen, the right thing will come out. I don't need to sort of plan a talk. First I'll talk about this, then I'll talk about that. I just never do anymore. And I totally trust that more than I trust it in music, maybe something. But in music, again, if I invite these 5 musicians and I say we're doing it like this, and it's kind of like that, and they start playing, it will just come. It will make itself beautiful. I have no doubt. I don't know it'll make itself commercial, but I certainly know it will make itself amazing. And I'm just all about the amazing. And I guess I've just been lucky enough that some of the things have sold enough to feed the kids. But I think it's because I've gone for the amazing, not the thing that I thought would make money. I mean, One Giant Leap, it set up the whole workshop business that I do now and stuff. Like, people are like, oh, wow, he did that, let's go and check him out. But we would have done One Giant Leap for $5,000. Luckily we got given millions to do it. But if someone had said you can just do it, I would have done it anyway. I was just doing it. I wanted to do it. We were just totally taken with, wow, this would be amazing. And if you're just taken with that, then even if you live a life not making much money, but always doing your projects based on, wow, this is great, on your deathbed, you're going to be like, that was a life well lived. I love doing this one. I love doing that one. This was an amazing experience. That was an amazing experience. Your worthwhileness if it's your enjoyment. You lived the better life than if you'd done a bunch of things that you would kind of like but made lots of money. I'm telling you, the first one's better.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. That's why I'm making this podcast.
Yeah. You're making a more beautiful world, for sure.
Whilst also, looking into the ugliness and the ugliness within. There's one thing that I want to talk about. It's a big thing for the very end.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about suicide because not many people feel comfortable talking about it.
Okay.
But we are in a place in society where a lot of people do feel kind of desperate and trapped within all of these pressures that we've created in our modern lives. And you wrote something interesting about suicide the other week. You did. Can you remember?
I don't know. What did I say? Well, I often, because my dad killed himself, I've often felt like I'm in the queue, that maybe that would happen. Although I've never had those kind of desperate feelings. I mean, I once thought of killing myself when I was having the peaking on panic attacks, not because life was too desperate. I wasn't like that. It was just, if I've got to have nothing or this every fucking day, I'm having nothing. It was pragmatic. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt pragmatic. Just, I need to kill myself because I can't put up with this every day forever. But yeah, no, I often think of myself, am I in the queue because of my dad? And then I realized, no, I'm not, because I'm so fucking different from him. I know why he killed himself, because of a lack of connection. And, he had drawn his connection from having lots of money or status or business, When all that was taken away from him, both me, my brother and my sister rang him up and said, Dad, don't worry about it. Just come to where we are. We've got enough. You don't need to even give anyone any money or anything like that. Just stay in our house. The grandchildren will crawl on you. Everything will be sorted. Just be the elder. No one needs anything from you. And all three of us said that to him at different times the day he killed himself, coincidentally. And he hadn't created the value of those connections. So it didn't seem to him a life worth living, just the connections of his loving family and all that stuff. Whereas I do consider, I think that I've learned from that I do consider my relationships with my children and my family and the friends and people that I love, like, so rich that you could take away all the material trappings and I wouldn't kill myself. You know what I mean? Like, I would have enough in my life that was worth living for. So I've really learned that it's connection. He didn't have that connection. He had nothing left. I often say there have been these YouTube links or films recently that have said that addiction is the opposite of connection. That drug addicts, when they gave them something to connect to, like a job, I think they just didn't need the drugs anymore. I think suicide, again, is a lack of connection. There's a funny story about this guy that was driving along, and every person he passed as he drove, he waved to them. And after a while, his girlfriend was like, "What are you doing, waving to every single person?" He goes, "Well, I heard this documentary of these people that had survived suicide, and they each said that if somebody had acknowledged them that day, they wouldn't have killed themselves." He says, "I'm just not taking any chances."
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I wonder if he still does it.
I wonder. But for me, my life, my art, my workshops, it's all about creating that connection, all about bringing us all together, being inclusive. Nobody's ever turned away for money reasons from any of my events, and I just want everyone to be together. I just want everyone to have that connection, and then you can deal with anything.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jamie.
Pleasure. So what a treat to be asked.
And it's jamiecatto.com, so you can find out more about all of the things.
And the book's called Insanely Gifted.
Thank you. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mentioned in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us, and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question: how will you create beauty in the world?